Bonjour. Hello there, everybody. Today we'll be talking about the basics of CSS Flexbox, Flex, and Grid. We'll mainly touch upon Grid because that's my favorite. It makes stuff a little easier. But, of course, it's nice to know Flexbox if you're working with nav bars and whatnot. Right? So Grid, what is Grid and why would you use it? Grid is just a templating system that you would use in order to, how do we say? It's a templating system for you to structure your web page, right? The best way I can think of it to explain it is to explain as a... I don't have Excel on, that's fine. The best way to explain CSS Grid is to think about like an Excel sheet, right? So what would you do is that you define just a little bit, give a keywords to your website like header. These parts would be your ads, content, sidebar, right? And here, all down here would be the footer. Right? So imagine how practical our website design would be if we could just make a system that could just follow this layout exactly why we wanted it. The top row will just be headers, and the middle we got one part ads, one part content, one part sidebar. You got the footer all the way in the bottom right there, right? That'll be pretty nice. Sneeze today. Well, that's the whole reason why we have grid, because as you can see, this is basically a grid layout. We can use CSS Grid to imitate it. So, firstly, what I've made right here is just a basic HTML site with a bunch of cards that turn down like this, right? Of course, very ugly. Doesn't look good. So, the first thing we want to do is to add a little bit of a gap, right? So, first off, I've named the main as basic grid, but I can just use the main tag here. Now, display. Yes, sir.
In the literal Apple Touch, I can have the effect for the when you have your Turi and like the div, it goes for shadows and everything.
Oh, on hover?
On
When you... Would you explain? Quand ça... Tu veux dire quand ça bouge un peu quand ça sourit au-dessus?
Exactement.
Alright, so that's the on hover pseudo class. That's an...
Okay.
So, what basically it says, if the dot card class, the card of class is let me zoom in for you guys and shut this down. So if the card of class is being hovered, right? Then you can add these CSS properties to it. The box shadow will be equal to this.
Okay.
And you can translate, and you can move it. You can translate Y by 3 pixels and make it a little bit bigger by 1.1 times. Right?
Oh, okay.
Alright.
Can you send it on the chat so I can use it in my website?
Yes, of course, Victor. Yep.
Thank you. And also you need the link from the body, from the right? I saw you had the link.
Up here? Where? This is just importing from the base URL. Not too difficult. This is just to make the cards look good, right? Because if not, they wouldn't be as pretty as this, and even now they're not that pretty. So what you can do with CSS Grid, right? You can organize the stuff in grids and templates, right? I already talked about that. So since they're a grid, you want to add a little bit of gap, a little bit of padding. So to add a gap, it's as simple as just saying gap, and we're going to say 1 root measurement. Let's look at what it did. Look at that. We got a little bit of spacing. We got the same 1 unit of spacing from every single thing. Looks how pretty it is. Still very ugly, but it's pretty now. Look. Very nice. Very nice. Now, next up, we want to organize this so that way it would look like one big row. So instead of going vertically like this, right? They go horizontally like this, all on one line if it can, and wraps around if it ever gets too long. So there's many ways to do this. We got 1, which will be too skinny and bad code, right? So you can do grid dash template columns 1fr 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 1fr. I don't know if that's enough. Yeah, okay. So look,
Maxime,
yes,
can't you use some kind of math
yes,
instead of repeating?
exactly. That's I said this is bad code. So yes, so if we start off with this, look at that, we got everything aligned on one row like we wanted it, but now it's too skinny, it's too small for it to be any useful. And looking at the code, if there's ever more cards or less cards, this code will not work the way we want it to, right? So we got another way. It's still not the best, right? Way number 2, which is cleaner. That's the only thing it's got going for it. You got grid, that's template columns, and then you can do repeat 15, 1 fractional unit, right? So let me first off explain what a fractional unit is, because I don't think I explained that well. I don't think I explained it at all, actually. Right. So we got our main. And 1 second while Firefox installs, has the bare dev tools for this. So just take a couple seconds. So if you can look into your main, you can see that. Sorry about that. You can see we got this little grid stuff, but of course, it's not. It doesn't explain it too well with Chrome. So I'm going to switch to Firefox for this lesson because Firefox is a lot better for CSS. There you go. Disable. Inspect. What the? Oh. Alright, so we can look into the main, and it helps us with the visualization of the code. If you look at this, let's save the... What do I need to do to save the... Yes. These are flex items. But Css Grid is not in use in this page. Bullshit. And that's wrong. Well, anyways, the way that Firefox does it to explain it pretty well. Yeah, if you can see the lines that are hovering underneath the blue lines, you got 2 blue lines that are vertical, that makes a column, and 2 blue lines that are horizontal, which makes the row, right? So what we've done in this code right here, we've repeated 15 times 1 fractional unit, which means that the columns will automatically take up 15 units if they can, right? So if fucking hell. So if this becomes too small, still keeps 15, right? But of course it gets squished along the process, so it doesn't work that well for us, right? So next, this still won't work too well for us, right? So we got a third way, which will, and don't forget, and also it's a little bit too small still, doesn't look good. So the third way we can do it is just to get some better sizing. But the problem with this method is that it overflows, right? You'll see what I mean later on. Grid dash template columns. Repeat, right? 15. Repeat 15 times. And then min max. 240px 1fr. So at the absolute minimum, take up 240 pixels. At the best case, take up 1 fractional unit. Now we look at this. Look at that. So when we look at this, it's taking up the 1 fractional unit like we wanted to. is nice, but the problem is, as you can see, it overflows. There's no wrapping. It doesn't change like the way we want it to. So to fix this, of course, instead of using 15 as a base number, we can just use auto dash fill. And what that will do is that if it ever becomes too small for a single thing to get down without getting squashed too much, and it'll just start re-adding them into different card stacks. See? So now it looks nice. We got nice little responsive grid. So any phone, any item will be able to see this grid perfectly the way we want it to. And that only took us 1, 2, 3 lines of code. Doesn't that look nice, guys? What do you guys think? I think it looks pretty good.
It does.
Yeah, it does, it does. Remember why I don't use Firefox now. So, next up, let's work on a photo gallery, right? So, you know how modern IKEA or stores like that, they have all these different give me 1 second. There we go. There we go. That's fixed it. Alright, so now what we have in this layout, right? We've got a bunch of cards with a bunch of images as backgrounds. That's look god awful. Right? What we want it to look like is something like something along the lines of yeah, this. Right? Now, wouldn't this look nice on the website? What do you guys think? I think it would. So, if we want to do something like that, what we're going to need to do is just do a little bit more CSS, right? So, first thing we can do, yep. So, on the photo, yep. Not photo grid. Alright, so on the photo grid, what we can do is display grid, right? And that just sets up the grid. Next up, we get the gap. Up. There we go. 1 rem. So now when we look back at the photo grid, we have just a little bit of space between, which makes it look a lot better, right? Now let's copy the rest of the code that we had before. Grid dash template columns. Repeat auto dash fill min max without the dash 240px 1fr, right? So now we got the little website with all the little images all rowed, right? But that doesn't look good because the images are too small. I wouldn't want to look at these images for too long. These photos don't look nice. So what we're gonna do, the main thing we can do to make this look better is increase the height, right? Increase the size that the rows take if I still have Firefox open. 1 second. There you go. So what we could do, we go into the body, the div, right? There we go. So what we could do, how do I keep the overlay grid? There we go. There we go. That looks better. So what we're gonna want to do, you see these 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, these little markers. What we can do is make the space in them a lot bigger, right? So let's say if we wanted to make it 240 pixels for each row, what we do instead of doing grid template column, we do grid dash template dash rows. And what that will do, that'll just give us a little bit of space, a little bit more space for each image. As you can see, they are now all. There we go. Yep. Oh, that's fine. These are main images. I forgot. Yep. So yes. Oh, whoops. I did grid template. That's the only does it for the first one. Grid auto dash rows. That fixes it. So now every row will be affected by this change. So yeah, there we go. I was wondering why something didn't look right. So now what we have all these different square images that are all 240 pixels, right? But that's while that's better than what we had before, it doesn't look as clean as the photo gallery that we have right here. What we can do, we can make some images wider, some taller, some smaller, some larger, if you understand what I mean. What we could do, I've already prepared some classes called card tall and card wide, right? So let's just work with those dot card dash tall. All right. So if you want the item to take up more space on the rows, so if we want to take, for instance, this motorcycle, we want it to be 2 rows tall. What we can do, we can say grid dash row, meaning how does this class affect the row? How does the CSS grid row work on this class? How does it work? You go down 2, so span 2 different rows, and then stop at auto. Stop when you feel like you should stop. So now when we look back, look at that, we got the motorcycle taking up 2 rows now instead of 1. You can see it's perfectly aligned with all the grids. Next up, let's work with wide. So, it's basically the same code. Wide. Instead of row, what we would do is column. Yes.
Wait, Maxime,
Yes.
what is the span for exactly?
Yes. Okay.
Um, for-
Okay. Of course. So what span would mean is take up exactly 2 rows of space, right? So if we ever have this image that we like, what we can do, tell it span 2 rows, which will mean take up 2 rows of space, 2 rows of in the CSS grid.
Oh, so this span is different from the
Yes, it's different from
tag in the.
yes, it's different from the span tag in
Okay.
HTML. Yes.
Thank you.
Span is a verb in English, which just means carry on for X amount of time. So we got the wide cards, we got the tall cards, and you got the normal cards around here. But you'll notice a small little problem. Hey, Jose. You'll notice a small problem when we resize this.
Oh.
When we have like small phone websites, right? Small phone viewports, it won't look as good because look, you got the normal images, they're just squashed down to oblivion on the side. So that won't work for the small images, but it works on medium-sized screens. So here's another introduction I'll teach you guys right now. It's called the media query. So all it does is it asks the hardware of your computer about the specifics of what you have. So in this case, screen. It's asking you the screen for the specifications and checking if the minimum width is equal to 600 pixels. If so, do this. If so, style the cards like this. There you go. If so, style the cards like this, the normal way. Like this. If not, just make them normal. Just make them all vertical like this on the phone. Now that's nice responsive. And that only took us around, well, quite a few lines, but for the effect we're going for, it's pretty economical. Don't know why why this doesn't work too well in Chrome, but that doesn't matter. So yeah, we got that. Now, finally, with the CSS Grid, we're gonna work with something animated right now, right? We're gonna learn how to use animations for this last one. Real quickly. Still not copying it right. There we go. So what we do at the beginning, clear everything. So we look back here, we got the animated grid with all the different content, right? We got all the different cards from A, B to L, and we have the last part, the main, which we're gonna want in the center of the contents, right? So if we were to visualize this in Excel, we would have A, B, C, D, E, F, and then G, H. Actually, main, 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 I, H, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, etc., etc., right? So you would have the main content at the beginning and have all the little, have all the letters around it, surrounding. So, first up, of course, you tell CSS to use the animated grid class as a grid, obviously. tid-grid is equal to a display dash grid, which is tell CSS to use this as a grid, right? Now let's just give this thing an explicit height, because if not, it'll just go way too big. And add a little bit of margins at the bottom, so that way it doesn't look too cramped on the screen. There we go. Let's see how this looks for now. Wait. Ah, so I didn't copy paste this stuff out. Oops, my bad. Sorry guys, my bad, my bad. There we go. Now I got the normal content here. Now, let's add the little gap like we did before. Not one rem. There we go. And now we got the spacing like we did before. Now, before we let CSS Grid define how the area looked, now we're gonna actually choose to do it on our own. Right, so we got grid dash template, not columns, but areas. There we go. So, first off, we got how many rows? We got 4 different rows that we want to use. 3, 4, there we go. Now you might be asking yourself, wait, what is this for? Why is he making 4 different strings? I'll tell you what we're doing. A, B, C, D, E, F. Let's actually make a wraparound. So L star star E K star star F J I H G. So what this will do, it's like our Excel spreadsheet that we made before, but this time it's explicitly written inside the code. Now, having an explicit grid like this, it's perfect for fixed size websites when you know exactly how you want the content to be organized. And there's no real problem with adding more, right? So now we got this explicit area. We can save this. Oh, and I'm recording something somehow. Now, of course,
Maxime,
yes.
is returning to the line at the end of each string required, or can you put them in one
Well,
line?
you can put them all in one line like this, but that kind of defeats the purpose of being able to visualize the Excel spreadsheet. Right?
Thank you.
So next, let's just add some CSS here to show. Now this is just repeated every time, so don't care too much about it. So you're just telling the first child of card, in this case, the first item with the card ID, card class, to follow this specific grid area. A, second one, the second one takes B, third one takes C, D, E, F, G, X, J, K, L, M, N, P, etc., etc. It's not that hard to follow along. It just, there we go. There we go. There we go. Now that's spaced correctly. So let's template the row. Let's make sure that every row looks somewhat consistent. In that case, let us add template rows, and that'll just allow us to, for 4 different rows, take 25% of the view height, right? Now when we look at this like this, we got all the different items in the cards. While we might not be able to see them, they are there, right? Yeah, and they're all stuck in this some specific area right here because we haven't finished the CSS yet. They're all invisible because I also made a keyframe animation. Problem is I didn't define the stagger delay, so just wait a minute here. Let's template the columns too. So when you make the columns, you got these ones on the sides. If you follow here, these will be 240 pixels. These one, the last here too, will be 240 pixels too. And the ones in the middle, I defined them as auto, which will mean that they will automatically resize based on the amount of space that the screen has left, right? And finally, let's add the stagger delay animation that I needed, and we should be good. Okay, there we go. And now, if you look at the web page, there's a bug somewhere. I can't figure out where.
Maxime,
Yes, Sammy?
so with the CSS grid, is that how you make it to format in mobile?
Well, that's not
So that
specifically.
the
It's
screen of a mobile.
not specific. Oh, you know what I did forget? I forgot to define the animation, right? So, well, no, what CSS Grid does, it just helps you template your, hello there, Amin. What CSS Grid, what CSS Grid does, it just allows you to template your HTML sites. So you can make it have a
Okay.
specific layout that you would want. In this case, what we're having is just all the content go from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, etc., etc. And this spirals around, and then you have the big, important content in the middle. Of course, I forgot to change this. Instead of the star, it should be the asterisk. Oh. Let's just replace this with M. Because that star would mess up a few things. This right X. M. Alright, there we go. Alright, that's done. Next up, what we need to do is define the animation. So I don't know if you guys already know this, how to define an animation, but it's always good to review. So to start an animation, you need to start defining by its keyframes. And then after that, you give it a name. In this case, I'll call it card entrance, because that's what I called it in the previous code. Now with keyframes, you have two different values. For the values of CSS, that has from. So you define what the value properties will be from the beginning of the animation. In this case, I want opacity 0, which will mean that will be transparent in the beginning. Transform scale 0.3, which will mean that it will start off at around a third of its normal size, and then I don't think I'll need the filter for this one. Yep. And then we got a 2. So you start from these properties and you go to the next set. In this case, opacity 1, normal, and then transform scale 1. Right? So now if we look at our website, look at that. That looks good. That looks good. Right?
Whoa, that's cool.
That is a very cool effect, yes. So all I did with this explicit templating system, right? So we've defined that the edges will be 240 pixels maximum, right? Now this with this website isn't designed with mobile in mind. That's fine. What we have is just a little animation for the beginning. That will just that just reloads the page like this and just opens it up like that. So that's one of the great things with CSS Grid. Imagine if we had to do this naturally with CSS. I wouldn't be able to do that. I don't know. Maybe you guys could if you just. I know I wouldn't though, right? Which is great because CSS Grid just takes care of all that for me, and it keeps the code light too. Well, relatively speaking, anyways, right? But if you can do what you can do with the code is that with CSS Grid, and child, stuff like that, they usually won't be big concerns in major code bases, and they're pretty light to compile down into. So after that, once this is done, it can make a lot shorter code, a lot shorter CSS payload, which makes your websites load faster than if you were to use an external CSS framework like, I don't know, Vueify. That's not. There it is. Vueify. There it is. And if you were to use this kind of material design frameworks to make your code look just like every other website, honestly. I don't like material design too much. Everybody uses it, and it's not really my style. But that's fine. Everybody has their choice. But Vueify is a very heavy package, quote unquote. Heavy for Google and Facebook standards. But what CSS Grid does, it's very light in comparison because you only have what you need. You got that, guys? So this is the basics of Grid. It's almost 7. You guys want me to keep going with Flexbox, or should I stop for today and leave you guys go?
Maybe just how to center items with the grid.
Yeah, that's a good. All right, that's a good one. That's a good thing. I should teach it. I should show you guys that one. All right. So let me get rid of all this useless CSS that I don't need right now. All right. There we go. There we go. And what should I call this? I should call this content. And here I'll just add the P with the content that I want, right? So here we got the animated grid and we got the content, right? Inspect. So we got the head, the content to take up this. Now let's make the content. Alright, so first off, let's make the dot content take up 1 and up height 100 VH. There you go. And now when you hover over this, it takes up 100% of the screen. Well, maybe I should make it 85.
Maxim,
Yes, sir.
why do you use VH? Like, can't you use pixels?
Ah, okay.
5%?
So what VH is, it's a vertical height. So according to the size of the image, right? We'll take up 85. Yeah, let's say 85% of the image height of the page height of the screen. Right? So it just makes it more fine-tuned and fine-tuned control for the it just makes more fine-tuned control over the height explicitly that you don't need to use media queries for or anything. You can use basic math. Right? So it's 85%. It won't ever go to keep the oh, that's not too much. Right, so we have this P content, right? Now imagine we want to center the div, right? We want to move the content from here down to here. The easiest way to do this, and this is just like a little CSS superpower that not many people know of, because it's so handy, and it's so simple too. So what you can do is you can just make the content a grid, right? And then what you can do, here's the kick, guys. Place dash items center. What this does, it puts all the items inside this grid to the center. Then, bam! Look at that. You got your website that goes straight to the center of the screen all the time. So we can make the I don't know. P font dash size 50 pixels. Alright. Look at that. Content's huge, but it's always dead center. This would work if I made it an image or anything like that. If I made an SVG, a GIF, a video. If I were to do anything and I want to center it, I can just use these two lines these two lines of codes to always just perfectly put it inside the center of the div. Alright, understand?
Yep.
Alright, perfect. So, do we have any more questions up until now? It's about to be 7, so I'll leave you guys to enjoy your weekend. Any questions before we head out? No, I'm in, nothing? Alright, since we got no more questions, alright, so I'll leave you guys to it. Enjoy your weekend and have a good day, guys. See ya.
Thank you.
Okay,
Have
bye-bye.
a good weekend. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.